And there's Mary.
Give me another second here. Okay.
Start yet?
Okay, we're streaming live on YouTube.
All right, great. So I think, is everybody on? I think we're.
Well, we don't have Mark yet.
Oh, Mark, okay. We got to start finding people $1. Clock starts at 7 o'clock.
There you go, Dave.
$1 a minute. We'll call that the John Auerbach Ordinance, if you're late for a meeting in the township.
Make it big so you can see people better. See up here? Up there?
Well, the issue of being late wasn't an insignificant one. We were trying to start up a $200 million chemical production facility.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's time was pretty valuable. So you're sitting in a morning meeting waiting for a couple key people to come in, and they're 5 or 10 minutes late. That wasn't productive.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
So, yeah, it was
infuriating.
Became a problem. So
Yep.
Mary, I think we're good to go.
We're good to go. We got everybody? Okay. I, Mary McVeigh, will call the January 20, 2021 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors meeting to order at 6:59 p.m. Woohoo! In attendance via Zoom, Vice Chair Dave Gerstenhaber, Supervisors Morris, Auerbach, and Day. And also in attendance are Solicitor Mark Thompson, Township Manager Joe McVaugh, Assistant Township Manager Jeff Eastburn, Secretary Mary Opramola, and how many members of the public?
2, 3, 4.
4 members of the public. Okay. First item is public comment. And this public comment is for anything relating.
Oh, you're going to do the pledge?
Oh, the pledge. I'm sorry. Yes. Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
Here we go. All right.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
of the
the
United States of America,
to the
to the
republic,
republic
for which it
for which
stands,
stands
one
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all. Of all days, we can't forget the Pledge of Allegiance today, can we?
Nope.
Nope. So,
Okay, Mary.
all right, now we'll go with public comment, and it's for anything relating to items on tonight's agenda. The last public comment is for items not on tonight's agenda. It's important you state your name clearly for the tape so that your comments can be reflected accurately. Please state whether you're a township resident or a township taxpayer. If you're using YouTube, you must type in your name and address before your comment will be recognized. If you do not identify yourself, your comments will not be reflected in the minutes. Any public comment on agenda items?
Yes, I have a comment.
Okay. State your name and if you're a resident.
My name is Jack Kuzik, and I'm a resident of the township. And I just have a couple comments in regard to the pickleball court.
Okay.
I apologize for not being at the meeting last month. I know you had some discussions over that. And I'd just like to make a few comments on my own. I've talked to Mary and Jeff in regard to looking at possibly adding 2 more courts to the existing enclosure. Just as a real comment, we as a group, there's probably 12 to 15 of us that play on a regular basis every Thursday and Saturday. And we're pretty much a hardy bunch. We play, we've played every winter. I mean, all winter long, except when it rains and snows. And so we actually had 12 people this past Saturday play.
Wow.
And what we'd like to do is, if we can, get 2 more courts put in. And we're not asking for a lot in that we're only looking to put in or purchasing 2 more nets and then relocating the courts 90 degrees from its present location so that we can put the 2 additional courts in the enclosure and then go ahead and paint the lines. So that's all we're asking. We're not asking for, coating the courts or refinishing the surface. And we estimate as a group that it would only cost probably about $800 to get all that done. And, if we did do that, we'd be able to play, the people that do show up
Yeah.
would play all at once rather than waiting their turn to get in to play a game.
Right.
So,
Jack, can I comment on what you just said?
Sure.
We're in the process, as you know, of looking at all the courts and, various things there in the park. And the pro committee's working on this. They were hoping to have everything ready for this Board of Supervisor meeting, but they have a few loose ends. So it looks like next month they will be coming to the Board of Supervisors with their suggestions, what they believe we should do, and then we will vote how much money we spend. But the pro board will be giving a report tonight. So I'm sure Greg or I don't see him on, but I do see Jim German on. One of them hopefully will update us. So stay tuned. We're very aware how active your group is and how important it is to get more courts, but we don't have everything together yet, or the pro board doesn't have everything together yet. But
okay.
we're working on it. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to give you one other example, if I may.
Sure.
When I don't play over at Croson Park, I will go over into Delaware at the Pike Creek area.
Okay.
There's a development over there called Deacon's Walk, and they have a small community park over there, and they have 8 pickleball courts over there.
Wow.
And they used to have 3 tennis courts there, and nobody used them. So they went ahead, took those out, put the 8 pickleball courts in, and I can go over there any week morning, springtime or summertime, and you will see 20 to 40 people playing pickleball over there. You would swear there's a tournament going on. And so, that's the kind of popularity you can get. I think the enthusiasm you can get when you do have more than 1 court, I think would see that if we had 2 more courts at the park.
Can you tell me the name of that place again, Jack?
Yeah, it's Deacon's Walk.
Deacon's Walk. Okay. Okay. I'd like to take a ride over there someday.
Hey, Jack, have you spoken with the pro group or anyone from the pro group about this?
No, I haven't.
Okay. The only reason I ask is I think they're working on the project, and it seems like they might be addressing some of those concerns.
Yeah.
So if you want to stick around for their report, it might be of interest to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
And
yeah.
didn't you guys send us a letter? Because I know we shared it with the pro board. Yes. So they have your letter from a couple months ago. Yeah.
Jeff, are you on the call? Is Jeff on?
Yes.
I'm here.
Jeff, can you just check? I mean, it's interesting to think about turning the direction 90 degrees. I don't know if you guys have talked about that, but that's definitely worth discussing with the pro group.
Yeah, they're on that, Nancy. They're definitely working on that so that more people can play. And
Yes.
it's doable. There's enough space.
Yeah, we've already looked at that, Nancy,
Yeah.
and we can fit 3 in if we do change, the positioning of the courts. And in fact, when you do that, the 2 main expansion joints within that fenced-in area will not be in the playing area anymore. And that's where we get 95% of our bad bounces.
Mhm.
So, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Just to let you know the direction that I'm going right now. Ultimately, it's like Mary said, it's the board's decision. But right now, I'm still gathering a few estimates to turn those courts so they're 90 degrees, adding 2 additional ones. So that's the direction I'm going, and we're going to try and make it work. Emphasis on try.
Would it be, Jack, do you know anybody from the Deacon's Walk community who might have been involved with that pickleball court work that maybe they went through it, so maybe they have some pointers. I don't know if you have someone that you might suggest we talk to somebody there.
You know, I've talked to the fellow that's kind of in charge of the courts over there.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked into it for me, and he couldn't come up with any of the contractors that did the work
Oh, okay.
in making, those changes.
Okay. That's fine.
I can still investigate that. There may be somebody else that I could contact over there that might know something, but
yeah.
The one fella that's kind of in charge that lets people know there's people playing there during the week, Harold, didn't have that information.
Okay.
And Jack and Beth, you can call me anytime. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you, Jack, that our tennis courts are used a lot. So one contractor that came out to the park recommended combining tennis courts and pickleball courts. And we said, no, that will just be a disaster for our tennis players and for you guys, the pickleball players. You're just going to be waiting in line. So we're not going to do that. But the focus is, as Jeff said, get those 3 pickleball courts in.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of momentum for this project because there's some pickleball players on the pro group. So it's probably a benefit too. So.
Yeah, and it seems like we're getting a couple of new players every month.
Wow.
We're getting people from the Jennersville YMCA coming over because they can't play indoors much anymore.
Right.
So, there's certainly the interest there.
Yeah, Mary, the only comment I'd make is that probably the most used facility we have are the ball fields,
Okay.
seconded by the tennis courts. So they're
Yes.
extremely popular facilities and very sought after. So
Yeah.
Give me a call tomorrow, Jack, and I'll give you an update as to where I am with things. And then I'll have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Hey, if that's it, are there any more public comments? Okay, if not, Dave, can you take the next item?
Sure. Approval of minutes. I motion for the board to approve version 1 of the December 16th, 2020 Board of Supervisor minutes.
Second.
Seconded by Nancy.
Mhm.
Discussion.
yeah, my comment is that I'm going to give it a reluctant yay vote on this one here because the discussion in the December meeting was pretty simple and the minutes are appropriate for that meeting. So I'll give it a yes vote.
All right. Thank you, John. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Let's see.
Okay, I think I'm next.
Yep.
I make a motion that the board approve the December 2020 Treasurers Report, which includes the following disbursements. The general fund with disbursements and transfers of $454,586.11. The Park and Recreation Fund with disbursements of $2,546.84. The Open Space Fund with disbursements of $6,330.74. The Capital Reserve Fund with disbursements of $48,641.36. The Emergency Services Fund with a disbursement of $64,880.07. And the Fire Hydrant Fund with disbursements of $580.80, leaving a balance in all funds totaling $700,712.80. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mary. Discussion.
Yeah. I don't have any comments on what you read out, Nancy, but I thought it was important to just note to the board and to the public that we were very worried last year about taxes, whether there would be a negative impact because of COVID. And based on the Treasury report for December, I think we actually did pretty good for the year. So that's actually good news. It takes a little bit of the pressure off the budget. But our real estate taxes were about $20,000 over budget, and our earned income taxes were $39,000 over budget. Doesn't mean there weren't other areas in the budget, maybe we were a little bit behind, but just some good news for the public. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Yeah, and Donna, I just was reading from the state of Pennsylvania too, that the liquid fuel tax money that we get, to use on our roads and things, they think it's going to be down approximately 10%, which is, it could have been a lot worse. So that's encouraging. Yeah.
I've got one comment on taxes that you might not know about. The county's going to raise taxes, real estate taxes, 4.2% starting first of the year.
That's already been decided, John? That's a done deal?
Yeah, I'll send a note out to the board.
Thanks, John.
Okay, any other comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0.
All right, the zoning officer report. In the month of December, 15 permits were issued. $1,422.04 in building fees. There were $667.41 collected in impact fees, and $2,725 in miscellaneous fees were collected. 31 inspections were performed. There were 4 ongoing zoning issues reported. There are 2 ongoing bamboo issues with a second notice of violation sent out in December. The third was an ongoing high grass issue, and the 4th zoning issue was a court decision on 3327 Appleton Road. Excuse me.
I have a question for Joan. Joan, the issue with the grass, are we mowing that? I know that the or it's not, it's with the bank, right? So we just taking that over and then we'll build them.
Well, right now, we're not mowing grass, for the winter. But we thought it went to sheriff's sale and was sold, and we were given the name of the company that purchased it, and then that sale didn't go through. So we believe it's back in the bank's hands. So if something doesn't happen by spring, we will have to start mowing it again.
Okay, great. And then the Appleton Road, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the agenda. Mary, do you want me to go next?
Go next. Yeah, I think we're done with that. Yep. Okay. Thank you,
So
Donna.
the PC held a meeting on January 7th, 2021. Dave, could you provide an update for us?
I wasn't actually aware I was supposed to provide an update on this one. So
you can do it, Dave.
Yeah, I can do it. Basically, what we did was we went over the incoming auto repair shop that's been going on on 896. There's a number of issues that the owner needs to address. So, namely, their septic system, septic usage. So we're going to continue to take a look at that. But otherwise, I think he's in the process of providing a sketch plan, if that's accurate, for us to consider the next go round. So, things are looking pretty good for that project. And then we welcomed our newest PC member, Matt Goen, to the board. So.
Dave, I have a question. Was anything brought up about the ordinance reviews that we did? Is the PC going to start on that and make a recommendation to the board?
Yes, that was the last. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. That was the actually last order of business. We have the book Jones provided us, and we're going to be going through the ordinance review. So thank you for bringing that up. Yep.
And I'd just like to make one quick comment. I know the ordinance on solar panels sort of dropped right when COVID hit everybody. But there is a webinar that's free. It's an hour and 15 minutes. It's being presented by Penn State through PSAS and Penn State. And it's to help townships design their solar panel ordinances. So if anybody, you do have to register. It doesn't cost you anything. But if anybody can view it, it's noon to 1:15 tomorrow.
And I will note that Penn State provided us guidance, whatever it was, 2 years ago.
I'm trying to find out if they are going to archive this so that if you can't be there between noon and 1:15, you could jump in when you have time to do it. If I get that information, I'll send it out to everybody or send it to Joan and she'll get it to everybody. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, so Mary, I'll go to the next one. Is
Thank
that
you,
okay?
Donna. Yep.
So the HARB Historical Committee held a meeting on January 5th. Chairman Legassi will provide a few updates. So Paul?
Thank you. Can you all hear me? I haven't used my, okay, good.
Yep.
So first order of business was the election of officers, and for the Historical Commission, I was elected chairman. Nan Latimer was elected vice chair, and Sarah Beth Kohat was elected secretary. For the HARB, I was elected chairman, and Mr. Mandich was elected vice chair, and we held off on electing a secretary, and I'm going to act as de facto secretary for the moment. I'm very excited to have that job. We first dealt with the historic resources map. We had, thanks to Jeff Eastburn's efforts working with Chesco 911, finally received an address for the one parcel we needed an address for. We got that off, and the map is now complete, and we'll work with getting that made available. The map has a map key as well, but that's done. We next discussed the Churchill African Cemetery, with the main focus of that being further work on expanding the research that was begun by Nan Latimer and I and Sally Gallagher and possibly Sarah Beth Kohat will be helping out with that research going forward. We have to divvy it up and figure out exactly what we're looking for. We'll be taking marching orders from Nan, who's done most of the work so far. So we'll see how that goes. And we need to develop a plan for cleanup. And as I've been mulling this over since the meeting, I think that we will probably not be looking at cleaning up quite as early as we would like to, simply because there will be a lot of things that we have to get out of the way first, and making sure that we've done everything properly and spoken to everybody who needs to be spoken to, making sure that we know that there is indeed no owner of the property, etc. And it may be somewhat more time consuming than I had hoped. The other topics, township cemeteries, 896 roadwork and walkable Kemblesville, a couple of things having to do with Franklin Township history and the history website. All of those, there was very little discussion on. These are on our agenda as ongoing topics to remind us that we have to be thinking about these, but we did not have any significant discussion. And finally, the last item on the agenda was 3327 Appleton, which was the first meeting on the, the second meeting rather, on the demolition request. And after some discussion with Mr. DeFrancesco, who was there representing himself, Mr. Gill, his lawyer, was not present. It was determined that this would be the last meeting on the topic, and the HARB basically made a recommendation that demolition would be inappropriate. However, I'd like to postpone any discussion of that because we have to submit a report to the supervisors, and that is in process. And the supervisors will have to take this up on their agenda at some point going forward. And that's pretty much it. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
So,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to go to the next one, what has to do with our PRO group. So Chairman Sachs, you're going to provide a brief update on the PRO's activities for January 6th. Let me hand it over to you, Greg.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So we currently, as previously mentioned, we currently have numerous projects that are in the works, which we're still gathering estimates and information on. One being the healing gardens. We're in the process of gathering the estimates to be reviewed by the Pro Board before we make any further recommendations. We've obtained one estimate and hoping to get at least one more. Board member Mary Hanley is working with the bike club and the county to map out some of the trails at Crossing. We have, new trails going in and just trying to get those all organized and mapped out. We're working on quotes with Jeff for several other projects at Crossing, which is including the tennis courts and the pickleball courts, among other stuff. Like Mary said before, we were hoping to have these prepared and together for this meeting, but we're hoping all these quotes and our have them all together for February. That way we can make recommendations from there. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Paul Overton, as long as he's on the call, and he's going to give an update on an open space project that we're working on.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Greg. So for the supervisors, we have an opportunity to potentially get an easement on a property. I'll just call it a property on Appleton Road. This would not be a purchase. This would just be the easement portion where the owner still retains ownership of the property and it remains a private property. We've been working with Natural Lands Trust to look at this property, and they think it has good potential for receiving grant money. So that's where the funding would come from. And the owner understands, we may not be able to get the full value, but he's still interested. So the first step in seeing if this is possible, and the first step before you can apply for grants, is to understand the value of the easement and the property. So that means we need an appraisal. And so I'm coming to you tonight to ask if you can approve $3,000 for an appraisal for this property through Natural Lands Trust. So does anybody have any questions? I mean, I've spoken to a few of you about it, but and I'm not trying to intentionally be too vague, but we traditionally keep these matters private because there's some personal information going on there with the owner that they might not want to share in public. So, but does anybody have any questions about it?
Yeah, Paul, this would be an easement, not a purchase, right?
Yeah, I made it perfectly clear to the owner, John, that it would not be a project or a property that the township would be interested in buying. It's not very flat, so it wouldn't make good athletic fields, although it would be great to have athletic fields in that part of the township, but it wouldn't work for that. And it's just too small to be like its own preserve. And so we never target to buy properties.
It's an undesirable property, as I had looked at many times, and it's only 15 acres, and it's got some water feature in the middle, and it's fairly steep. I assume the owner wants to just get money out of it and leave. Is that what his objective is?
So I don't want to maybe say in public, John, what the owner may want to do, but he's interested in preserving the property, and then he would have retain ownership. And if the owner wanted to sell it or keep it, that's his decision. We wouldn't be involved in that, right? That's just a private sale of the farm. I'm
just trying to understand what his overall objective is, because I understand that the property was inherited from his parent.
That's
the owners of a property. The parents died, and they wanted it preserved.
That's correct. Yeah.
And what I heard this afternoon, talking to Joan, that Natural Lands Trust is going to be able to preserve this property without any financial input from the township. Is that correct?
So there's no guarantee, John, but what I just said was that the Natural Lands Trust would work with the owner to apply for all the appropriate grants that they think they would score well in. And of course, there's no guarantee they would get the grants, and there's no guarantee the grants would be enough money to satisfy the owner. And so at that point, the owner can make a decision to walk away and say, thanks for trying, or the owner could agree to a donation, which happens on several of our projects, where they have to donate the delta between the grant value and the easement value. And then they can take a tax write-off against their earnings for the next 16 years, if they can. Like, I don't know what his financial situation is, so it may or may not benefit the owner, but.
That's the way I always looked at it, is essentially their heirs have received the property as a windfall. So they're the party in the deal that has cash to spend. So if they want to preserve it with respect to their parents, then they ought to put up the money and do it.
I'm not sure what you mean to have cash to spend. The land doesn't have any value until you sell it.
Well, it does have value when you sell it, but they want to preserve it before they sell it, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Yes.
Paul, if I could clarify then, other than the $3,000, you don't see the township spending more money? Or
That's correct, but I don't know what's happening, like what kind of grants you might get, but you know, I don't want to promise it. And let me just throw out a number. We don't know what the values are, but if they're $50,000 short, then yeah, we'll just walk away from it, and you know, that's not going to work, right? But if we're like $5,000 short, now I'm going to come back to you and say, hey, we can do this for $5,000. Are you in? And you know, just to sweeten the pot, and that seals the deal. Then heck yeah, I'll come back and ask for that. That's worth it for the 6 or 7 houses. So, but of course, this isn't a $50,000 value or $100,000 or whatever. I would not ask that for the township.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about when you think about this $3,000 is, you know, when I think back to the issues that we've had in the past year, you know, probably since land development has started, is it ends up costing the township a lot of money as these development opportunities happen. And even so, when you know, recently we have Lexington Pointe, we're talking about the DeFrancisco property. We have the gourmet mushroom compost facility. And at the inflection point of those projects where we lost control, you know, and I've talked to a lot of people on this board about these things, is we didn't have control over our own destiny about what happened to that property. So we ended up holding the bag with the compost facilities. Now we got a sewage facility that we might have to put in place. All of this costs a lot of money, and it's not even, it's the development costs to the township as we bring it in, and then ongoing costs. The way I look at this individual in this specific instance, we can spend $3,000 and I can wash my hands of the property and not have to worry about any of this. That's probably money well spent. I mean, it just makes it so simple. So I think in the long term, if you look at long-term costs of land development, this is a win if we can get this done.
Yeah, I'd also want to point out that since the Open Space Committee all resigned a few years back, we haven't had much activity in the open space arena. And so these opportunities don't come along very often. So it's the first time in a few years we've had an active project pop up.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily true, Paul. I mean, I'm not disagreeing about the 3,000. We have done some work with some easements for the Stolfus property and some other property. So
yes.
I don't think that impacts my decision on this property, but there has been projects here and there since the board.
I wouldn't make a decision on an open space property just because we haven't had one for a while. We've got to come up with the right one because there's very limited fund, and there's certainly no housing pressure when you look at the housing growth over the past years from 2007 to now. So I think you got to look at the right project and not some marginal project. So I would look at this $3,000 as a potential financial entanglement in the project. So I think the owner should fund this thing and not the township, because if Natural Lands Trust can fund it fully on their own account, then we're out of it. It's not a good property in any way, so I'm not sure why we're even involved in it.
So John, what do you say it's not a good property? What do you mean not a good property? Because it's actually quite easy to develop. There wouldn't have to be any road or stormwater put in. The developer can have 6 driveways right off of the existing roads. It's a sweet property to develop. So when you say it's not desirable, yes, it's weeded and overgrown, but I'm not sure what you mean by not desirable, because having 15 acres in the middle of Landenberg is very desirable.
I think you got limited opportunity. You're going to have a limited opportunity for possibly a larger project, and this one just isn't a good one. I think it's very limited development there.
I think what Dave said was really interesting. We spent quite a bit of money on the golf course work, and not through anyone's fault, but we spent over $10,000, and that's only because the request was rescinded. I think it's a really smart way to look at spending our money. So I like that perspective, and I think $3,000 is just so minor compared to what I've seen over the past few years in terms of money we spend and we don't necessarily get anything back for.
I think it's the beginning of a financial entanglement for the township. Once you invest $3,000, then you're going to be inclined to put more into it. So I think that the owner who's got the money in the deal should fund the appraisal. If they want to preserve it, they've got money. It's found money for them. They inherit it as heirs. So I think they ought to fund it, not the township.
Mary, what should we do? Should we create a motion and then vote on it?
Yeah.
Are you there, Mary?
You're on mute, Mary.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to get off mute. And now what did you say, Nancy? What do you want me to do? Create a motion?
Create a motion to spend $3,000. It's not a lot of money, but I think just to be clean, we should create a motion and vote.
I agree.
Okay. All right, then I make a motion that we spend $3,000 to get an appraisal of this 15 acres on Auburn Road. All in favor?
Oh, I second it.
You second it. Thank you, Nancy. All right, we've had a lot of discussion. Any more discussion on this?
I have some more discussion. I don't think that we've had an adequate amount of time to look at this thing. First time I heard about it was today in a meeting with Donna and Joan. So I don't think we've had any time at all to understand what this deal's about. So I don't see
I
don't see what the urgency is. We would just put it off for another month so we could at least gather some more information. I'm not ready to vote for it.
John, this is a standard ag easement or a standard easement situation where we've done many of them. I mean, this isn't that different from any other easement that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a kind of a boilerplate process that doesn't require that much more intricacy, right?
I'd like to know more about the deal, and I only heard about it today. So I don't like the idea of somebody springing up an open space project in one day and we have to vote on a financial entanglement.
Yeah, so I want to apologize for that, John. That's my fault that it all came together very quickly. But as you just mentioned, you've known the property for a long time and then have visited it and you're very familiar with it. But it just came to where I finally got the owner's financial advisor, and Natural Lands Trust all together on a Zoom call. You know, doing everything that way is a little bit more difficult. And then we also had the pro committee vote on it. And I forgot to mention the pro committee voted unanimously to do this project or go forward with this appraisal is the way I should say it.
I just don't see the rush for the board. So it's a no vote for me.
Well, for me, the rush is that you got to strike while the iron's hot, right? This property is sitting there and it only comes up once a generation. And so once we lose this opportunity, it's gone.
What's the downside of waiting? If they sell it to somebody else, we're out of the picture.
Correct.
Well, if they sell it, right.
Yeah,
And then
when
it
you
gets
sell it to
developed, and to Dave's point, we may be sitting there going over a development plan for months.
That's correct.
So,
At 3 times the cost.
so John, do you have any other comments?
Not likely considering the housing growth since 2007. We've only had about
10% the past year in Franklin Township.
Well, we've only had a 0.5% growth since 2007 when the subprime mortgage market collapsed. So I don't see the housing
Sales
pressure.
have gone up 10% in the past year, John.
No, where's 10%? I don't see 10% at all.
You can read it. It's in the news.
The chart that I put out was based on our permit book. The number of permits that are issued in Franklin Township going all the way back to 1995. So the data, the raw data is indisputable. And it shows a 0.5% growth since 2007.
So John, should we preserve property when the market's slow, or preserve property when the market is so hot we can't compete with the developers?
I don't see a hot market coming. In fact, I see the market, I see the economy taking a significant step back. We've had the best economy possible in the last 3 years, the best in the United States, and we've had almost no growth in Franklin Township. So I don't see it getting any better.
Those numbers aren't factual, John.
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Yeah, okay, and then I'd like to make a comment after you're done, just a clarification comment. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean, I'm a real estate appraiser. That's my full-time job. Been doing this for 13 years, and the market is as hot as it's ever been in 13 years. Houses are selling extremely quick all over Chester County, Delaware. So, I mean, as far as growth, it's about as hot as it can be.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Greg is actually an expert on it, so we can probably not have to talk about that anymore.
You're selling
so I have a
existing houses,
clarifying-
not growth.
What's that?
So,
Existing houses, not growth.
so Donna, I think you have a comment.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question to ask. So I just want to be clear. I don't know who it really goes to, maybe Paul. So Paul, we're not signing a deal. All this was on the table right now is for the township to put up $3,000 to do an appraisal, right? That's all we're being asked to do. We're not signing that we're gonna. I just want because they could walk away. I mean, my position. I'm going to vote yes for this. So I just want to be clear. But it's not like they can walk away or we can walk away. We're not committed to do anything. It's more just like in good faith. You got these folks together. They want an appraisal because it's what you need to do to check the box to get the process started with Natural Land Trust. But if tomorrow the owner turns around and says, I don't want to do this anymore, then he's not going to do it. And if we turn around and say, we're not committed to any more money, so it's just the $3,000. Not that $3,000 isn't a lot of money, but that's what we're talking about. It's a commitment of $3,000 from the township. So Paul, can you?
Yeah, that's correct. That's well said. And as I stated, I made it clear to the owner that we don't have any more open space funds to fund the easement. We would not participate in that.
I think, Mary, I think we should vote. I think, and if people think that now's not the time to vote, well, then they should vote no. If people think that this is something we should do, then we should vote yes. So.
Okay, well then we'll take a vote. We'll take a resolution for the township to spend $3,000 for an appraisal on this 15-acre property on Auburn Road. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so the resolution passes 4-0.
No, 4-1.
4-1, I'm sorry. Yeah, 4-1. Oh, whatever.
Thank
Sorry,
you very
John.
much, Mary and
4-1.
supervisors. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Thanks, Paul and Greg.
And
Thank you.
Greg, are you finished with your report for the pro committee?
Yep, that's all we had.
Okay, well then
Greg, I have a question for you. Is $3,000 a reasonable amount of money for an appraisal? Is that what they normally go for?
For this type of appraisal, yeah. I mean, it's way more detailed.
Okay.
It's not just a typical, residential appraisal. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And to make a comment, Greg, what you were saying about how hot the market is. My daughter lives in Media, which has always been a hot town. The people that want to buy houses cannot even get out to see it. It's purchased before they can get to the house. They're using all their underground networks to try and get to see houses. And Media is not inexpensive, and their taxes are really high, really high. So it's hot. It's really hot, the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the comprehensive plan, if we're good on this. Nan Latimer, are you on? I don't see her.
No.
She's not. She was going to provide an update on the upcoming agenda for the January meeting. Can anybody else pick that up? I know Nan sent out an agenda for the meeting. This is going to be the community input meeting for the comprehensive plan.
Yes, next Tuesday,
Okay.
it's going to be for the community. We have a notice on our website and,
Okay.
asking people to sign in to that. I mean, all the meetings for the comp plan are public, but they're specifically asking that the community, again, sign on to this so that they
Okay.
can have their comments a second time.
So
Okay.
Mary, in a quick look, I see that there's going to be 6 priority subjects to be discussed.
Right.
Campbellsville Village enhancements, agricultural retention, trail and other pedestrian connections, resource protection as a green infrastructure, roads and other community infrastructure, and future land use. So that'll give people a general idea of what's going to be discussed.
And if they need any information, they can go to our website and connect to the Zoom meeting. Correct, Joan?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
one of the, Nan is also, she sent a note to the board just for the public to know that has encouraged all of the board of supervisors to be on that meeting as well. So hopefully all of us will be able to attend that open comp plan meeting for discussion. So look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. All right. Jim German, are you on?
Yes.
Oh, I see you're on. Can you give a report for the Franklin Township Sportsman's Association?
Yes, I can. Real short report tonight. Membership unchanged at 35. Hunting seasons, this Saturday, the 23rd of January, the deer season, both archery and the extended shotgun will close formally for the season and won't open again until the fall. No issues that have been around at the various parcels. To date, the Sportsman Club have harvested 14 deer, 10 of them coming out of Franklin, 3 out of Banashire, and 1 out of Goodwin. Community service wise, there were no service projects over the last month. However, the Sportsman Association did adopt a local Avon Grove family and provided over $400 worth of presents, food, and gift cards for the holiday season to that family. And they also donated to the local scout troop to support outdoor activities, and another $250. And for the year since June, since July, I'm sorry, 96.5 hours of service has been donated to the township. And we, the pro committee, crossing over a little bit, and Jeff Eastburn, the towns have come up with the release forms for volunteers. We'll be signing off again on that at our monthly meeting later in this month. So once we get that, I'll get copies back to Jeff on that.
Thank you, Jim. That's wonderful. Thank you. All right, Dave, move on to business.
Okay. I make a motion to accept the resignation of the Franklin Township elected auditor, Larry Elliott Jones. Larry is no longer a resident of Franklin Township.
Second.
All right, seconded by John. Thank you. Any discussion?
The only thing I'd say, Larry's a longtime resident of Franklin Township, been here a long time before I moved in. In fact, he was the attorney that helped me manage my initial purchase of property in the township. So sorry to see him leave. Very experienced lawyer and a good friend. So hopefully he finds something that's better than what he has right now.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor? Any other discussion before we move on? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0.
It's just ironic. It's not like we can do, I mean, he's leaving.
I know. I was just going to
No.
say, if we didn't accept his resignation, does he have to come back?
Oh, okay, John.
Before we make the next motion, I just want to correct the spelling of Phil's name. It's R-E-E-D, just for second.
Okay, thank you.
Want to make sure we don't proliferate that further. So I make a motion to appoint Philip Reed as a Franklin Township elected auditor.
I'll second that, John.
Okay, discussion. I've known Phil for almost as long as I've lived in the township. He's actually predated me. He's moved into the township in 1973. So he's a longtime resident with he and his wife, Leslie. We've always endeavored to try to look for people who have professional credentials, and certainly professional credentials that are appropriate to the position they take. And he fits pretty well. He's he's got a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from the University of Delaware in 1996. He's got a CPA license in the state of Delaware from 1997. He's got a whole list of accomplishments, Masters of Taxation from the University of South Carolina. He's got a Pennsylvania CPA certificate. He's inactive right now, as many professional people are. My PE is also lapsed in training. It costs a good bit of money to keep one of these credentials up, and you don't lose it. If you want to re-engage the training, you can get the credential back. But he is retired, but I don't think he's forgot anything. He's a very experienced CPA. Just a side note, his wife, Leslie, lived on the farm that's now owned by the owners of Queen Lane and certainly Gourmet. Her father, and the family name was Kirkman, owned 120 acres up there. And as he subdivided it, he applied the deed restrictions against mushroom production that are currently in contention right now. So Leslie is a long-term resident for the township. She grew up in that property where I think Arrington owns it right now. So, but anyway, they're long-term residents, and I think they're entirely appropriate for the position. So that's my comments.
Okay.
All right,
Any other discussion?
To vote.
Discussion.
Okay, should we take a vote?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, Solicitor Mark Thompson will provide an update on 3327 Appleton Road. Mark, we'll talk about it, Mark, and then if we decide to take action, we will have a motion that we'll discuss.
That's at the option of the board. 3327, I think the board is familiar with the issues that have been going on for the past 2 years at the property. We currently have a hearing scheduled before the Court of Common Pleas. The last enforcement that the township engaged in late last year, we were successful before the district court, and that was appealed by Mr. DeFrancesco on behalf of the trust to the Court of Common Pleas, as is the standard appellate procedure in summary citations, such as we have been issuing. So that hearing is scheduled for next week. The township, Joan had asked for an evaluation of the merits under what's called the Pennsylvania Blight Act. And that is a law that allows municipalities to petition the Court of Common Pleas for what's called a conservatorship. Generally, the act defines blighted properties. There's a list of requirements that a property would have to meet. We think that this property would meet those requirements, such as no one having lived there for the past 2 years. The property's not up for sale. There's a whole list of them. I don't feel like I need to go through them right now. We did have a discussion about it. Assuming you meet those requirements, you can petition the court for the appointment of a conservator. And a conservator has the ability, assuming the court were to move forward and appoint a conservator, such an entity, it could be a government, it could be an individual. We would have to figure out who exactly we want to be the conservator. I have had experience in other cases where the township itself was appointed the conservator to look after a property. You essentially become responsible for the property. You can spend money to take certain whatever they may be, to rehabilitate or perform certain construction that would be necessary to make the property safe and not a nuisance to other neighboring properties. And that's generally. And you would be able to essentially lien the property for those expenses. Now, this would all be done under court supervision. It's not a simple process. It's a process that can take time. It's not something like these enforcement notices that we have been involved in, where we file something with the district court. We get a hearing date. We have a hearing that lasts an hour or two, and then we have follow up with the Court of Common Pleas, and ultimately someone pays a fine, or there's the potential of going to jail. Because we have been engaged in this enforcement for quite some time, we have yet to convince the property owner to take the necessary action to bring the property into compliance under the demolition by neglect ordinance. We're looking at this option under the Blight Act. And if the board wanted me to look into drafting a petition, and there are other things that we'd need to do, such as we would need to have a title search because we need to notify any lien holders on the property. Certain administrative things we'd need to do. I think we would need more information on the actual state of the property. The HARB had an extensive discussion at its meeting earlier in the month. Certainly, we have 2 reports that the HARB evaluated, and we could evaluate those reports. But ultimately, there's a pretty simple resolution that's on the table that would authorize my office to essentially move forward with taking the steps necessary to file a petition. We don't have one ready to go tomorrow, and we would have to do a little bit more legwork, but it's certainly an option given the fact that the standard enforcement regimen has not worked.
So Mark, I have a question for you. So I see what the motion is on our motion sheet, and it's pretty general motion. I was wondering if we could take a different tack and just have we communicated to the property owner our intention of doing this? Could we take that as our next step, that we're planning to file this, see what his reaction?
Yeah, ultimately, we certainly would want to communicate to the property owner. If the board wanted to wait until next month to pass the resolution, certainly you could direct me to communicate that this is something that the township is seriously considering, and that it's going to be up, on the next agenda.
What do you think he might do once he's made aware?
Well, I think my understanding, Nancy, and at least maybe I'll look at why I would vote for this is because I'd want him to act. I'd want him to take responsibility for the property, and this would be one more opportunity to say, look, we've waited, we've done what we could from a court perspective, nothing's happened. We're going to take it to the next step. We want to give you the heads up that we're going to be doing this and see if he does anything. And if he does it, then we have to come back next month and have I want numbers. We need to have a discussion in terms of how much is it going to cost for us to first of all, to file all this stuff, and then what to do to the house itself. And we need to make a decision. Do we want to do this as a township?
I'd
So
like to comment next, and then each person can comment, because I think it's important. When we had the discussion, over the long term, the approach that we're looking at is not going to cost the township money. So the township will temporarily, if we go forward with this, need to spend money fixing the house up. And right now, that house is unsafe. And I think it's been unsafe for at least a year, if not longer. So I'm very uncomfortable waiting, but we can come back to that. So what would happen is, with this, then the township would hire, obviously, experts to fence it off, to ensure that no one can get hurt in it, that no one's going to, it's not going to catch on fire, it's not going to fall into 896. And then once it is repaired and brought back to a reasonable condition, which is what he committed to originally, then when he goes to sell the lots, which he is very eager to do, that money comes back to the township. So the township is not put at risk of spending its own money on this. And we did talk about some numbers. It certainly wasn't a tremendous amount of money, but it's enough money that we would certainly want to talk more about it, Donna. But my view at this point is I think it's dangerous. I think it's been dangerous. He's shown no good faith over however long this has been, 2 years. So that's my view.
So I have some thoughts here. I just kind of made some notes as I was thinking about this. But, you know, one of the things that I think about, the common thread about being in control of your own destiny, if we pass the motion now, the owner is going to be notified that we're doing this. And at that point, he can react to it, right? He can say, oh, guys, let's put the brakes on it. I'm going to do this, this, and this, right? He couldn't do that. But at least if we do this now, we don't give him any more time to pull any more porches off of the building or do whatever else he was going to do. And we are now in control of the situation, right? I'm afraid the more this drags on, we are opening ourselves up to one a dangerous situation, either naturally from a building falling down or some bad behavior on the property owner's side. So I think passing the motion now and getting the ball officially rolling is the right approach, because he can always react, right? He's going to find out once we vote on this tonight. And again, it puts us back in control of this situation. Right now, I don't trust him. I don't want to have him in control of this situation, which he has been for the past, several years. And so this is our way of saying, no, we're taking this away from you now.
But Dave, if we pass it now, we don't know how much this is going. So I just disagree with what Nancy said to a point where we will have to put money out. I don't even know how much money that is yet. I like to get those numbers, and we don't know when that money comes back. We have a sense that it will sell someday. I don't know if that's this year, next year, whatever, because he has to agree to the price. But we don't have that big of a budget, right? So you see the numbers. I'm making, if this thing costs $100,000, $200,000 to fix, I have no idea. I don't know where we get that money because we don't have it. We don't have it sitting.
So let me play devil's advocate, because none of us have the numbers, right? Let's just say it comes back and it's going to be $200,000 to fix the property. Does he win? Okay, we'll just let it sit there until, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, regardless of whether it's $10,000 or $250,000, we can't continue down this road, right? And so
I would go back to lawyers to say, Mark, what do we do next? Besides, if it's not this,
yeah.
I mean, I like to have it said, look, this is we're preparing to move here, and seeing how he reacts. And I, in the meantime, would like to get somebody to give me some numbers. What is this thing going to look like? But I'm just one vote. So we should just have everybody else talk to.
Well, we don't know. I mean, the process would be to do the ultimate legwork to file the petition with the Court of Common Pleas. We would need to think about issues such as a plan for taking action to remediate the property, whatever that plan might be. There had been discussion before the HARB concerning an inspection of the property. The property owner had put what I would deem to be unreasonable conditions on an inspection, such as he having a say in who the township would ultimately have inspect that property. But I would think we'd want to have that type of inspection, which would necessarily, involve a discussion of the situation with the property owner. I would imagine that if authorized to move forward with a petition, or even if, the owner was notified that the board was having this discussion and considering taking this action, that might change the discussion, or at least the level of discussion that we're having concerning the property. Not to say that this is being used specifically as a threat, but I think the board certainly is in a position where we're looking at the objective facts, we're looking at the property, and it would seem to meet the requirements under the act for the filing of a petition. Now, this isn't a guarantee that any entity, even if it were the township, would be appointed a conservator. Again, this is litigation. It would be litigation. We don't appoint a conservator. We have to ask a judge to do that. And we have to explain to the judge why a conservator needs to be appointed. And we would have to ultimately inform a judge what we would want to have done with the property. Now we're going to need to get advice from our engineer on that. So like I said, there's a little bit more work to do, but certainly notifying the property owner of this discussion may cause some further discussion on how we'd like to see the property ultimately comply with the demolition by neglect and HARB regulations.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, no, I mean, it's not necessarily a linear situation. I mean, the property owner would have the ability to, since it is a petition, to essentially dispute the facts with the Court of Common Pleas, and we would engage in potential discovery, things of that nature. So I think that what the board is just looking at right now is how to move down that path, given the fact that we've looked at it and we think that this is definitely a viable option.
So I guess, and I'm thinking about what Donna had. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Dave. Finish.
I was thinking about what Donna had said about, it's true. Like, we don't want to get into a situation where all of a sudden we've got to spend, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars to get out of it. You don't want to do that. But where I'm stuck is, well, how do you get to that point where we know how much money it's going to cost us? And it sounds like and from my understanding is you have to start this process in order to get to the point where we know how much it's going to cost us, right? Because like, he's not going to say, oh yeah, bring in your engineers and evaluate my property and we'll figure this out. My gut's telling me that thing's going to be, a pile of bricks before we get to a point where we're actually assessing the property.
Right.
And so I guess my question is, we do this, we put a fence around it. After that, we have a number of options in order to proceed, right? It could be, on the most extreme case, we bulldoze the thing down and we sell it to a developer. It could be that we rehab the whole property. It could be that we just put a new roof and some windows on and let the new owner deal with it. And so I guess where I'm stuck, Donna, is because I see what you're saying is, well, how do we get to those numbers without actually kind of taking that conservatorship? All right, that's kind of where I'm stuck.
If I could make a comment, I think I'm kind of in between you, Dave, and you, Donna. I do not want to commit to spend $200,000, as you said, Donna, that we don't have. However, we can't continue down the path we've been on. It's not working.
Yeah.
And that house is getting worse by the month. I also worry about the neighbors. They're at risk. That is an empty house. It's a fire hazard. Nobody lives there. So it's dangerous. It's also a historic house that we don't want to lose if we don't have to. So I'm reluctant to approve this resolution if it locks us into, okay, now we have to pay what we have to pay to rehab it. But I would vote for it if we're not locked in, if we're just telling the owner, here's your chance, do it, or we're going to take it over. Or is there a way we could say, we discussed this, we're going to approve this resolution for conservatorship unless you step up to the plate and do something, because what we've been trying to work with you is not working and it's a danger to the neighbors. I don't know, Mark, do you think that would work?
Mary, just so that we're clear, this is not committing to spending any money on the property. All this does is authorize me to begin the process of moving forward with a petition under the Blight Act.
Well, then I would be all for it, because what we have been doing, the owner is not responding and we need to put some teeth into it for the benefit of our township, the historic house, and the neighbors that live next door to it.
So Mark, then you'd have to re-say because the way the motion reads right now, it's very wide open. So I would look to you or someone to rephrase it to be what you said, to begin the process. But also I would like somewhere along the line a communication to him that we are doing this.
Yeah.
However, so I think if you could I think Mary, you and I, we're all kind of all in agreement. We haven't heard from John yet, but I'm not ready to sign my money to say let's spend $200,000, but I am ready to say let's continue the process, let's continue working on this, and let's get a communication to him saying we are seriously considering.
Yeah. So I just want to get a clarification because I think it's really important. Mark, by conservatorship, the deed doesn't go in anyone's name. It is just as you're a conservator of someone else's money or property, we're overseeing it until that owner who owns it now sells his entire whatever he's selling, and that's when the money comes back. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, assuming a judge were to appoint the township or another organization. I mean, in some instances, it's not the municipality that's looking at being appointed as a conservator. In this case, I don't know if we have another entity out there that would be appropriate to act as a conservator. But for temporary, I mean, theoretically, from a temporary standpoint, the conservator steps in the shoes of the owner and takes actions as if they were the owner, including insuring the property. And then at the end of the process, the expenses of the conservator would be leaned against the property, and then the property could potentially be sold. I was involved in a case with an absentee landlord with a conservatorship. The landlord did not contest the township in that case's petition. They stepped back. They lived in another state. This was a situation where we were looking to obtain an order from a judge to demolish a house which had gotten so far down the line where a tree had fallen on it. But again, we didn't have anybody that was on the other side, essentially litigating the issues of what the conservator should or should not be doing. I would imagine in this case, the property owner would probably have a different opinion on what needs to be done out there, given the fact that they currently have an application to demolish the house before the HARB, that the HARB voted to take action on and will ultimately be before the Board of Supervisors. We know what their position is, certainly on the house. We would need to do some more analysis to figure out what the township's position would ultimately be. Again, filing, this language is general. It would just authorize me to represent the township in petitioning the court for the appointment of a conservator. Again, this isn't something that would happen overnight. You would file a petition. There's something called a rule to show cause. The property owner would then have an opportunity to respond. We could potentially, and I think that's a month, and then we would be looking at a potential hearing before a judge. So all this would take probably several months, maybe a month or two, ultimately to get before a judge. But again, I think just engaging in the process would allow for us to discuss with the property owner what we're looking ultimately to have done out there.
So I think Mark, from what I'm hearing you say is that you would suggest that we pass this motion.
I have a couple of questions, a specific question on some language in one of the memos, and then some comments. So I want to get that in. Mark, this question is related to one of your memos, and it says that it is important to keep in mind that the mortgage holder could proceed with foreclosure and may defeat the ability to proceed with conservatorship. So, and then it goes on to say that to establish conservatorship, the following must apply as of the date of the filing position. And number 3 says the property is not subject to pending foreclosure. My understanding, it has a mortgage on it. So could the mortgagee foreclose on the property and scuttle the deal?
It's always a possibility, John.
Okay, so we don't know about that. The other unknown you have.
We haven't done.
John, can I have a quick follow-up on that point?
Yeah, you got another issue is that you really don't know how a court's going to view this thing. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
You're taking this property away from the rightful owner for good reason in our case, but a judge may not see it that way. We haven't had the best of luck in these courts so far, so that's always a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to understand the risk.
The other easy way out of this thing, and you mentioned it before, David, is that you give them a demo permit. Allow them to put something else up in there.
I think most of the community would not want to do that. So that's not the discussion for today.
So let me just back up, because one of the questions that we had, John, that you mentioned was there's a mortgage out on the property. And as I understand it, the mortgage is through one of his own companies.
Oh, that's true. But I mean, it's.
So can you he would foreclose on himself, right? That's how he would handle that.
It's a potential impediment in the legal process, although it seems a bit unusual, but
nothing about this is usual.
You got to step up in the legal process. That's why I asked the question.
I think the other thing that complicates it is that, so Mark, this is tied into all the lots. And actually one of the requirements of subdividing those lots is to preserve this property. And he wants to come back and make some changes. And I think when we discussed it, it sounds as if we at least have the upper hand in this if we move forward with the intention of getting this particular subset of the property to the point that it was committed to by the owner.
All right, here's my position on it.
I'd like to hear Mark's, but yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at.
If we allow Mark to continue with the process without making a hard motion, I'll accept that. But if we go to a hard motion, then I've got a real problem with it. I've got some concerns overall. I want to see more development before I vote on it. So that's where I am. If you make a hard motion, then it's probably going to be a no vote.
Well, I don't know what you mean by a hard motion, right? Because he's putting in a petition to start this conservatorship.
There's a motion on the floor right now for it. So
no, that's what I mean is that we're going to vote for him to begin this process, right? So we didn't have to file the petition, see how he responds.
We didn't have to vote for him to get to this point. Why do we need to vote now?
I think, John, because he's not doing anything. We're not getting anywhere with this man. And as Mark said, we're not committing to spend, God forbid, $200,000. We're just committing to let Mark start the process. Hopefully this will prompt the owner to do something he's been unwilling to do based on the road we've been going down with him so far.
Yeah,
We don't need a motion for that. We can just
Can you
do Mark-
clarify, folks, can we hold off and let Mark clarify?
Not sure what I was clarifying, but
Well, I'd like to know what cards we hold. Is this considered a subset of the entire subdivision?
I guess what I was going to say was that this is just it's a tool in the toolbox, and we've been looking at, we've been using the tools that, haven't necessarily been working.
Yeah.
I think that the Blight Act is tailored towards a situation like this. Again, I don't know what the position of the property owner would be, but ultimately, if we were to file a petition with the court, I would need to have something that memorialized an affirmative vote of the board. And that's not to say that we would be doing this immediately. Again, there may be circumstances where other issues arise that would come back to the board and, certainly necessitate another vote in public. And I can't envision those right now. But I mean, again, when we talk about situations like that involve litigation and other parties, and certainly we are trying to do the diligent thing by ensuring that a property does not become more of a nuisance than it already is.
I think,
No, certainly. And again, you're not committing to spending any money on the property itself at this point. But I think we would need to figure out, as we moved ahead with the process, what that would look like.
Yeah. Well, I think too that the owner wants to knock the house down. And as long as we keep doing things the way we've been doing them, he's winning. The house will fall down. I mean, the HARB can say, no, you cannot knock it down. But if it keeps deteriorating, the darn thing's going to fall down. So we have to do something stronger than we've been doing. He's been paying fines, but I think they're insignificant. I'd rather pay that fine, and then I can let the house fall down. Boom. Then away I go. I get my way. So we have to do something stronger. But I agree with you, Donna. I'm reluctant to.
So and I think the key point here. Go ahead, Nancy.
My biggest concern is safety. And yes. I don't think we are elected as supervisors to make tough decisions and to try to protect our community. Right now, we are not succeeding in our current strategy.
I agree.
And I think we have an obligation to do our best for the community, not necessarily for him and not necessarily for ourselves, for the entire community to make this as safe as possible. And if 2 months from now, for some bizarre reason, we haven't done anything and it burns down, that's on us, I believe. I think we need to be more straightforward, more proactive. This has been going on forever.
Yeah.
And I think, a month ago when we all met to discuss this, we were all on board. We were ready. We were at another inflection point where we had to make a decision. How are we going to proceed? Are we going to continue to let this guy do what he wants, or are we going to make a decision? And we all decided, this Blight Act, we should act on this. We should change our behavior. And now what we're saying is, well, we're not ready to change our behavior. And let me just say one other thing. The reason that I'm comfortable with passing this motion is that it's not committing us to any financial burden. We're not committing to spending any money. We're just starting to file the petition. There's a lot of intermediary steps before we actually put a fence around that building and we spend any money. And he has a chance to respond. We have a chance to respond. And we finally have a chance to actually stand up and say enough's enough. And I'm done. I'm done giving these people choices. We've been giving this guy choices for years and he's always made the bad decision. And now we're saying, let's be nice and give him another choice. No, I'm done. I mean, I'm voting for how John put it, a hard motion that I'm going to vote for this, but I'm done with this.
There's a way to look at it, David. We've already started Mark down the process. So we haven't told him to stop. So I don't see any reason why we need a hard motion to let the thing continue. It's already going. We started them. I don't think he needs a motion to continue. I think if you take a hard motion, you're committing yourself to something, and we're looking to get more information, and you'll get that if you allow them to continue, but I won't go for a hard motion. I recommend you withdraw the motion.
Donna, what would you like to do?
So, can we just ask? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Donna.
Yeah, no, so I just want to, so Nancy, to answer your question, I would prefer to tell Mark, continue to work on this, continue to gather the information you need to do to get ready to do the filing, and to communicate with the owner in parallel to say, look, we're planning to do this. That's what I would prefer. And then if he doesn't respond, then we have to come back and we have to make the decision. Are we willing to spend that money or not? So, and I would like to have a sense of how big that money is. But that's what I would prefer. I would prefer for us to get together and through our discussion say, Mark, we want to continue to go down this road. Please continue to do the work that you need to do to make this happen. And then, as I said, but also communicate with the owner in parallel.
Yeah, I mean, certainly communicating with the property owner that a discussion was had at the Board of Supervisors concerning this option, and that the consensus was that I'm directed to move forward with a petition. And then if certainly we want to have something approved, at either a later meeting or at another time. So that can actually take place once we have more information.
Do we need to vote to direct you to file the petition?
Yeah, you've already started the process. You've already got the thing going, so you don't need to vote to continue.
Mark?
I'm confused then.
Mark?
Mark?
I mean, listen, a resolution is just a document that outlines a policy. It's not a law, so it's just basically a statement that says we are taking a vote for an individual to do something, or the board's position on a certain subject. So certainly, I'm just suggesting that if the consensus of the board wasn't to enact or vote on this resolution, but you wanted me to move forward with the process, it wouldn't be as forceful, obviously, as having a resolution authorizing me to actually file a petition. But I could certainly alert the property owner that the board, inclined to move forward with this.
So basically, if we don't vote, you cannot move forward with filing a petition.
I can't file a petition. Yeah.
And
so
if
that's what we
we
want you to do.
We don't
Right.
have any record of this township saying enough, we want to protect our citizens.
Right.
Can
Okay.
I just say a couple things?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd like to actually clarify a couple things. First off, Mary, we don't get to say you can't demolish. What we get to say as the HARB is that we come before the supervisors, and it is our considered recommendation that you get to say not to demolish, and
Okay.
you have to make that decision. So I would like to clarify that for anybody. Also, while Mark correctly stated Mr. DeFrancesco's stance concerning input into having somebody go inside the property to do an inspection, as of the last meeting, in fact, if my memory serves me correctly, Mr. DeFrancesco basically said that we were entitled to look at the outside as much as we wanted to. And it's a small paraphrase, but he was no longer attempting to reach a compromise on having somebody go inside.
He needs to be considered a hostile to us.
Well, I'm not, I'm trying to relate facts without,
Emotion, yeah.
I have some considered opinions on this, but those and the members and the opinions of the members of the HARB are reserved for the recommendations that we're going to make to you for now. And also, Dave, I think you might have been on the verge of asking me when you were going to get our recommendation at the end of my presentation. And I actually have to clarify this schedule with Mark, and Mark and I have slightly different opinions. I think both are valid. I have a very conservative opinion on the timing based on how we've handled things in the past. So I would prefer not to deviate from that, even though I think Mark may well be somewhat more correct than I am. He is our solicitor after all, and I am not. But that with basically the clock begins with the first meeting. 3 weeks later, we were due to meet again. So I count those 3 weeks as part of the running of the clock. At that point, it was continued. It was continued until January 5th. And now the clock is running again for us to submit our report because we made a decision on January 5th. So we have 45 days plus 5 days additional if we have, in order to work with the property owner, if we recommend against the property owner's request. So that means a total of 50 days in all. 15 of those work days are gone. So that's 35. Am I doing the math right? Anyway, it would be somewhere, by my count, it would be somewhere around the 23rd of February when this would be due. Especially if we were required to allow for those additional 5 days, we would have to go to the 23rd of February before we pass this on to the supervisors, which would actually, I believe, mean it's after your February meeting. So that's my sense of the timing, but we can work this out with Mark, but that gives you a sense. And that's actually a fairly fast clock. That's not, I think, not a slow clock. Finally, with respect to what township expenses might be, should it come to that, I would point out that with a historic property in the shape that this historic property is in, the first step would be to stabilize the property to prevent any further damage. And that might well be considered enough under the circumstances, since the improvement of the property is required to occur in conjunction with the outstanding subdivision plan for the property. So that might, fundamentally that means you stop, the weather from getting in, because the worst thing that you can allow to have to happen to a property is to lose the roof. Once you lose the roof, it is pretty much over and done with. The roof, I think, is fundamentally sound. There's some question as to whether it's still leaking or not, and without an inspection inside, you can't judge that. The inspection is not going to happen unless it's required by a court.
Well, Paul, didn't our zoning officer inspect that hole, because that was a bone of contention a while back, and
that inspection occurred at least a year ago now, maybe a year and a half ago, by Jeff's estimate at 2 meetings ago, I believe. So I'm trying to, I would have to look at the minutes, because I have, one of the reasons I've been very cautious about characterizing what anyone has said with respect to the discussions held at the HARB. And so I have gotten away in this one instance from standard minute procedures, and I'm happy to own up to that. Should a question ever arise. And so they are boringly detailed.
I think it's established that the building's weather tight, and I believe it is, but you could go back and talk to Jeff Vogels.
You would need to inspect it to know that for sure. And Jeff said he was in there when it was pouring raining and the roof was still leaking. I think that's what he said, but that would have been two meetings ago. So it may not be 100% weather tight. It's also important to remember that the woods that are used in a building of this age are often much more resistant to rot than the sort of pine that we put in our current modern buildings. So even with some continual leakage, it's probably sturdier. Any further work, if you were looking at a purchaser who was used to dealing with older homes would happen in a staged manner. You would not necessarily try and go in there and accomplish all at once. And I don't know how much the township would be expected to accomplish as a conservator. And those are discussions for the solicitor and the supervisors. But, you know, I'm of the opinion, on the basis of having learned that there is a certain amount, not a lot of people beating down the doors, but a certain amount of interest in the property locally, and the belief that it could potentially be rehabbed, that it's worth taking a look at. And I would prefer not to discuss that aspect of it.
Well, my understanding, there are supposedly buyers interested. So if they're interested,
that is what I've heard. And
talk to DeFrancisco himself and buy it outright, get the township out of it.
Well, you have to get him to sell first. And that it strikes me that given the situation in which Mr. DeFrancesco finds himself with respect to the plan and this house and what he would like to do with the property on Franklin Road, that he's engaged in what is potentially a complex dance with the township and potential buyers as well. And it's not my job to sort that out here, but
just an observation that if they're buyers that are interested, they ought to be encouraged to just work with him directly.
That may not be possible under the current circumstances. It was on the market, and I'm aware that it has been withdrawn, and it's not clear to me why that's happened. And I'm aware, I believe that there were offers made on the property.
That's too bad, because a change of ownership could completely change this whole discussion.
Right, but we can't control that.
No, we can't control that. And I would point out that, unfortunately, I think it's fair to say, independent of whatever decision the HARB made in its recommendation, and without necessarily, I'm not trying to prejudice that we are working with an unwilling owner. I think you've seen that with respect to simply trying to go back and forth with citations, and then one court and then another court. I would point out that a willing owner who has a plan would find it very easy to work with the HARB in a staged manner to restore this house. And mind you, the HARB, again, what that owner would find that the HARB would be very willing to advocate for patience on the part of the supervisors in order that such an owner might accomplish what would be a very desirable result for the historic district. This is a core building in the center of the historic district. Losing this building is undesirable. Simply put, it's undesirable. And, so I'll just let it go at that. But I did want to point out that any expense on the part of the township might well be much to talk about what it might ultimately cost to fix the property. You have to get away from estimates that emphasize what the most expensive results are. We don't care what you go in and do on the inside. If you gut it and cover it with wallboard and that works well for you, that's just fine. What we're interested in preserving the streetscape. And that's the only thing that the HARB makes recommendations on. We make no recommendations on what you do with the inside.
Unfortunately, that doesn't value the property as a sellable property just because it looks decent on the outside. I understand your objective, but it still doesn't make it a livable property.
No, but it doesn't make it an unlivable property either. Those questions are on the interior.
And I think one of the things we don't want to forget here is the objective of the board is to stabilize the property so that it is safe and secure and not burning down, falling down, hurting people. And I think that's the initial objective. What we do beyond that is way down the line beyond this property. So we can then incorporate. So when we make a decision today, and I think, Paul, I agree with everything you said. I think it's an important building and it is core to the street. But right now, the motion is simply, do we let this continue to deteriorate today? And are we as a board willing to say enough's enough? We're going to take action. And from my understanding, if we approve this resolution, so Mark can submit his petition, that'll get that ball rolling. We aren't committing ourselves to any money. We aren't committing ourselves to any outcome other than making sure that we are telling this owner we are on board with stopping this behavior, and this is happening. And he can make a decision tomorrow once he's notified to say, you know what, I don't want to go down this legal pathway. I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to fix the house, and we can back off. We're done, right? But I think we're sending a signal by voting today that enough's enough. We're controlling our own destiny, and we're going to give him an opportunity when we tell him. Like, I'm not, let's give him a courtesy. We're done. We're done giving him a courtesy. He is not going to listen to us until we put a 2x4 up against his head. And this is exactly why we had the meeting a month ago. When I came in here, and I'm actually surprised that, with the reluctance, because we were all on board that this was the right thing to do because enough was enough. And now that it's decision time, people are starting to back off. I am not backing off. Want this on the.
David, I do want to make it, because I was right from the beginning. I always said I was fine continuing to work on this, but I will, even at our exec session, I talked about I was worried about the money. So I haven't changed, but I do want to ask a clarifying question of Mark. So Mark, I want to be clear. If we vote today to say, go ahead, go file the petition, and the court, that starts us on a process, and the court says, yes, we agree, we're going to grant you conservatorship, whatever the right word is, we can't pull out. I mean, we are giving you the okay to start on the path. We can't change our mind, or can we? Never mind. Can we do that? Or once we say go to it, we have to finish it. We have to. If the court says yes, we agree, you have it, then we got to do something, right? And can you clarify that?
Mark? Are you on mute? Did we lose Mark?
Hope not. We need him.
Mark, you're on mute.
I apologize. The board obviously is with any enforcement, we would constantly update you on any issues and facts as we determine them as part of the process. And you wouldn't be committed to doing anything. This just gives me the direction right now where I can at least say, okay, let's do what we need to do to move forward with a petition. If something were to come up, another circumstance, new fact that we would need to evaluate, obviously, we would provide that to the board, and we would be able to make decisions based on those facts, just as it would be with any enforcement action. I think we've kind of been along this enforcement path, and not to say that this is an enforcement action. This is just another tool in the township's toolbox to deal with blighted properties, which this is. So you are authorizing me to begin using this tool, and if we want to take a different tact, this is not setting anyone in stone. We obviously, and I don't think, again, this doesn't give us the ability to put a fence around the property next week or even several weeks from now. But certainly we can renew demands that the property owners secure the property, as we have been doing for 2 years now, and that he take action to comply with the historic district ordinance and any other property maintenance issue that we can determine out there. So, I mean, that's going to continue, Donna. Those communications will continue. I think what this resolution does, and I would I probably would tweak the language before the board signs it, just to make it clear that you're authorizing just me on behalf of the township to petition the Court of Common Pleas for the appointment of a conservator. There's no determination as to who the conservator would be. There's no determination as to how much money would need to be spent on the property. I would imagine that those issues would be determined as we move forward in the process.
But if you make it, this is for you to do the petition, right? That's what potentially is on the board right now to talk about. And if the court agrees, then no facts change, but the court agrees, then we need to do that, right? There's no, or is there any backing out? I mean, once we go down this road, we're agreeing to take this to the end, right?
Well, if ultimately the decision was made that we would be the conservator, and the court appointed the township as the conservator, then yeah, we would be locked in at that point to basically care for the property as if it were a township property. Now, ultimately, we have the ability to lien the property for the expenses incurred as part of the process.
Right, but the problem with the lien is just exactly what Paul talked about. This is a very difficult owner, and he doesn't think logically. He may say, "Screw you! I'll sit on this thing for the next 10 years, and you can lien me all you want, but I'm not selling it." So I think we just have to go in this with all eyes wide open. That he could be a very vindictive man who just says, "I won't sell it," and if he doesn't sell it, we don't get our money back.
Yeah, and ultimately it's a judge that gets to make these decisions on, who's appointed as a conservator. All we're doing is petitioning a judge. We're explaining to the Court of Common Pleas, and specifically a judge, why the property should have a conservator dealing with it. And the factors going into that is the time that we've spent with enforcement, the nature of the enforcement, the nuisance that the property is causing to the neighbors and the township in general. These are all factors that would ultimately go into, the decision that a judge would make. Could those facts change a week from now, or a month or 2 or 3 from now? Certainly they could.
I have a question. One of the things is we're talking like we could end up as the conservator. Can we make suggestions as to who the conservator might be? Like, say we decide Natural Lands Trusts could be the conservator of this property, right? Someone who would be responsible for looking at a historic property and they're interested in this kind of thing. Would that be an option? So we don't necessarily take the light. We're not we're not the conservator, rather another entity is.
We could be, David.
We could be, but I'm just saying, could we suggest another conservator that might take over that property?
I think you got to look at any conservator is going to have to put some real money into this thing. And I think that's the issue that Donna has. I'm all over the place in this thing. I flip-flop 3 or 4 times at discussion here. But ultimately, the township could end up investing a fair amount of money and not get it back for a long time. That's the worry. And of course, real estate deals are very dicey. I mean, to predict how these deals could actually play out is really kind of a crapshoot.
Well, too, John, we're not just looking at that house. That owner has 15 acres there that he wants to do something with. So if he says to us, "I'm not going to sell that house now that you put $200,000 into it," well, then you're not going to do anything with the 15 acres. So, and he does want to do something with the 15 acres. He's expressed that, but I think we got to do something.
I don't think he's got a lot of money invested in this property. I have some information. I have to go reestablish how correct it is, but I don't think he's got the kind of money invested that we believe. So he's probably more willing to sit on it for a while.
Okay. I think we kind of beat this to death tonight.
Yeah.
Can we just go ahead and take a vote on the
I have to state the
resolution?
Yeah.
So are we gonna Nancy, are we gonna reword the resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I make a motion that the Board of Supervisors gives Mark Thompson authority to petition the Court of Common Pleas. I don't know, Mark, and to submit a, however you want to say it, resolution or conservatorship to 3327 Appleton Road. Mark, do you want to reword that for me in a different way?
I mean, that's fine, Nancy. The way the resolution is worded is that you would authorize the solicitor to represent the township in petitioning the Court of Common Pleas for the appointment of a conservator pursuant to the Abandoned and Blighted Property Conservator Act, which is essentially the same thing you just said. So that would be
I tried to capture it as quickly as I could, but so are we all in agreement with what we're voting on? And Mary Oprah Mola, do you think you might have that down?
I hope you wrote quickly, Mary.
Well, we can. That
so far, and then I gave up.
I don't do anything quickly, but I will tell you it's on YouTube, so I can go back and repeat it and rewrite it. Okay.
All right.
Regardless of how you word the motion, if you go ahead with it, you're committing yourself to be the conservator and have to put some money into this thing to bring it up to some standard. I heard Mark talk about that a good bit, but ultimately, if he petitions the court and the court says, yes, you're the conservator, then you're on for the ride. You got to fix it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, John, I do understand your point, but let me finish. I feel like we have to live with, what happens to the people in the community.
Yeah, we got to do something.
It's just a money decision.
I know. And we got to do something. Okay, can we go for a vote for this?
Need a second, first of all.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Donna, were you aye or nay?
I was a nay. I was a nay. So I do want to thank the board. We lost David's 8:30 stop, but I do appreciate the conversation. I thought everybody put their position out there, and I thought we handled it good, and it was not an easy decision to make. So thank you.
I agree. It's not an easy decision. I just think we're committing ourselves to something we probably shouldn't. We're getting involved in a real estate deal, and we have no experience managing something like this. It's just a big worry for me.
Okay, so the motion carries 3-2. And Donna, you're next.
I should pay attention. Okay, sorry about that. So we're going to move on to Mark. Back to you again. If you could, hopefully, a brief update on Lexington Pointe. How we doing with our pals there?
Stan certainly is the better person to do the update. We did have, I believe, ACOM's update does indicate that they are in a position where the permit can be submitted. And Joan, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they did that analysis. They have multiple comments that have been sent out over the last 2 weeks. So that continues to be, I did have a correspondence with their attorney concerning their desire to have new financial security in place for the construction of this facility. That was one of the requirements, certainly, of the agreement, to have that financial security. So they have, he had submitted a bond language for that, which we are reviewing. Other than that, I don't think there's, a lot of activity. I mean, we did have the activity concerning seeding the property, which took place before the holidays. But right now, that's about it.
And Joe, just remind me, I thought we did submit the permit. That was at the last meeting, yes?
Well, you approved it conditioned on Stan and Sandy approving the changes on their end, which they have. And I'm waiting to get a copy of the document from Keystone's engineer so I can sign it and it be submitted. So
okay, so we're close, which hasn't happened yet, but we're close.
Right. And Mark, a question for you. When we went over the agreements, 2 months ago now or so, I don't think we all have signed copies of those. When I say all, I mean the Township and Keystone. I remember they all agreed to everything that was in them, but do we have signed documents?
Keystone signed the agreement. Let's circle back and make sure that we have a copy that's the same copy we're all looking at.
Okay, yes, please.
Any other questions for Mark? Okay, so Mary, I'm gonna move us on, okay? So, Joe, this is off to you. Just if you give us an update on the part-time secretarial position.
Okay, well, we received quite a few applications for this position. And one day last week, when Eileen was in the office, and just if you don't know, Eileen is a former head of an HR department, so she's familiar with this. So she went over the applications with Mary and me, and we rated them as to who we thought would be a good choice. So the top 4 I reached out to, and we had Zoom interviews with them on Tuesday, and Mary and Jeff and I attended most of them. Jeff couldn't make the last one, and we actually all agree on a candidate that we think we would be really happy with. And I would like to reach out to her and get her in as soon as possible. She's agreed to the times that I've given her, the hours, and she's very flexible, that if something should happen that we need her, a little bit more one day or another, she's flexible like that. Or if we need her to attend a meeting, if Mary's not here to take the minutes, that she could step in and do that. She's had some experience with that. So I think she would work out, and Mary, Jeff, and I all agree that this is somebody that we think would fit in.
So do we need to give you the okay, or did you just do?
Well, you already told me to hire someone, so I'm going to do that.
Do you need?
So I would say go do it, right?
Do you need us to commit to how much she will be paid, or?
Well, you already gave me a range.
A range, okay.
And we're at the low end of that, so.
Where are we at with Carrie's report? I thought we were going to get his report.
Carrie just talked to Mark last week. And that's the last person he had to talk to. And he sent me an email with some questions regarding building permits and zoning permits. I have to give him that information. And then he said he'll, work on it as soon as possible.
Well, weren't we going to wait for his report before we hire anybody?
Well, John, we still need somebody because Mary can't continue to work full time. Yeah. So we need someone.
I think we only need 1 part-time secretary, not 2.
You're not the one doing the work. We need somebody there.
Well, the only reason is that I'm trying to limit the resource that's available and enforce some priorities on work.
So, but we agreed at the last meeting, Joe, that you would hire this person. They would understand that we are undergoing a look at our organization, and then you said she's flexible, so we could be back and talk to her about how things are going.
Exactly.
But we can't wait for. I don't think we can wait. That could be another month.
We need somebody because Mary can't continue to work on a full-time basis. Now, I did tell this person that we would want her 4 days a week, part-time 4 days a week, that she wouldn't be responsible for Friday unless there was something special that we needed some help with. Because I'm assuming you had wanted to close the office to the public one day.
What happened to the 3-day a week? I thought we were going to go to 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
We never agreed to that.
No, we agreed to total hours, I think, John, like we were trying to keep it 3 days a week, whatever hours
like
broken out, or 4 days a week and cut the hours per day down.
I don't
Yeah,
think
It was like total hours for the week.
I think we gave a range. We were talking about a range of 20 to 25 hours, and however
Yes.
that was split up.
Yeah.
So
However you split it up.
Yeah.
Right now, I've talked to her for 20 hours for 4 days a week for 20 hours. So she would be there from 10 to 3 for those 4 days.
Yeah, okay. Joe,
And
can
if we
I
need-
ask you what skill
can
sets
change it.
she's
Sorry.
bringing? Can I ask you what skill sets she's bringing, like just briefly and overall?
Well, she's worked at Lincoln University she's worked.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I don't mean to put you on the
you
dime.
know what, Joan? You can just send us the resume and we can look
Yeah.
at it. I mean,
Yeah.
That's fine.
I trust you. You know the
Yeah.
office better than any of the five of us,
Exactly.
so we trust you to make your decision.
She does have a good skill set. She actually was a paramedic at one time, so
Oh, wow.
she's used to working in, doing a
Tense
lot of things,
situations.
and having a lot of balls up in the air. So she can handle that. And
Yeah.
some of the work she did at Lincoln University, she handled some of their what did she call it, Mary? The department. I don't have her resume in front of me.
That's fine. I don't mean to put you on the dime, Joanna, or Joan. I was just being newsy.
It's the performing arts.
I'd be
the
happy.
performing arts,
Yeah.
Joan.
Yes, that's right.
It sounds great. And
Yeah.
and we gave you responsibility to go ahead and hire, so I think you should
Do your thing, Joan.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next issue.
Thank you, Donna.
I caused enough trouble today, Mary.
That's
So,
okay.
so I actually did bring this up to Joan, so it's my fault for these next three about what was going on with the solar ordinance. And so Joan, I think we could start there, and then the other two hopefully will be quicker. But I just would like to just get a context to where we're at with this ordinance. I think there is some stuff that Joan's looking for the board to do before we send it back to the PC. But Joan, can I hand this over to you so you can brief us on this?
Sure. As you will recall, in 2019, the board spent a couple meetings working on this ordinance and going over what you as a board would like to see in it, in this ordinance. And then we sent it off to the PC, and they made a couple recommendations that I thought were good at the first meeting. One of them was changing from restricting kilowatt hours to a square footage, because they said technology is going to change and panels are going to get smaller. So, if you could get a lot more kilowatt hours in the same square footage. So they said, let's go to just drop the kilowatt hours and go to square footage. And then they made a few other recommendations along the way. And then when we got to the third meeting, I don't know what happened, but they decided to delete all changes that they had made and recommended. So there was nothing in there, including the escrow that the board had asked for to dismantle a solar farm. We wanted some escrow maintained so that if someone walked away from a large multi-acreage solar farm, that there would be money to see that it was dismantled properly and the farm put back into ag. And they took that out of it. And, we just stopped it at that point. And so what I would like to see the board go back and look at what you recommended the first time we'll get Jeff Vogels to come up with a couple of these changes that were good recommendations from the PC, and then send it back to them again and say, okay.
Why do we?
So we don't spend. I mean, I think we spent a lot of money with Jeff on that. I'm going to assume we did, because the revisions just kept going and going and going, and I think it ended up being like 20 pages. It became incredibly complicated and long, and this is something that we had other townships give us theirs, including Penn State's township, whatever that is, and somewhere we lost the plot. So I'm okay starting again if we have better self-control and discipline.
That wasn't Jeff Vogels that made all those changes, because
No, I'm not blaming Jeff. No, I'm just saying every time we make a change, we're spending money with Jeff, and I think we must have made 6 or 7 versions. So it just seemed like a very wasteful process.
It was once the PC got a hold of it, that's where the changes took place.
And one of the questions that I had about this solar ordinance is there's, national standards, there's state standards. Why do we need to come up with our own standards? Like, so when we go into when a builder goes in with a solar panel array, they are beholden to state and county and national standards for these things. Why do we need to create regulations on this for our township. It's already heavily regulated.
Yeah,
I think we're looking at escrow, we're looking at storm water, we're looking at other things, right? So there are regulations for the solar panels themselves, right, and how they're set up and all that. But this is other things that have to be considered based on a property in the township. At least that's how I looked at it. There's other things that we would be concerned about that maybe the state regulations wouldn't be.
well, and every township has something different. For example, setbacks and buffering and things of that nature. I mean, they're the fine-tuned areas that we get into as a township.
But wouldn't that be covered under existing structures, right? So your setback, like I have a setback on my property if I put a pool in or a shed or a solar panel array. I mean, if it's a solar panel array, I don't think I'm exempt from that setback. Like my point is, there's already existing regulations on my property that will prevent me from doing anything untoward with the solar panel. So why would we need to?
David, some of the issues are not being addressed. The stormwater issue is not addressed in the current stormwater ordinance, which is Act 167. They don't address solar panels, but stormwater management will be an issue if we don't take the owner and the developer to task on it. So I think
aren't they considered semi-permeable? Is that what it is?
Because the thing is really impervious because the solar panel blocks the stormwater from directly engaging the soil.
Right.
Runs off the edge of the panel, and if there's any slope to the land, it will channel. So we don't have our ordinance doesn't address the stormwater ordinance doesn't address it. But if we don't,
so is that where we put it then? Do we put it in the stormwater ordinance?
No, we have good guidance.
What you got to do is you got to put some words in there that their engineer has to come up with a system that manages the stormwater in a manner that prevents erosion and certainly prevents runoff on the adjoining properties and erosion there. Because if you get erosion off the property into somebody else's property and you approve it, the township's responsible for remediating somebody else's property. So
now, the good news is we have lots and lots of examples.
Doesn't address the issue.
You can follow it.
Yeah.
That I think is most important that Joan mentioned is escrow. So let's say someone comes in, a corporation, and puts in panels,
like you normally do. Go ahead.
Okay, and then they decide to leave. Well, we need to make sure money has been set aside for the dismantling of those panels. Otherwise, we could be stuck with, dinosaurs on land.
So I guess, John, I think you were getting at the stormwater. So here's where I'm at. There's two issues. There's solar panels for me as a small generator. If I wanted solar panels on my house, there's current restrictions on how much wattage I can generate. But then there's the corporate side, like someone who wants to be a commercial generator, right? And that's where we want some ordinances.
That's right. I think really what happened, the PC got wrapped up and started to regulate all these little rooftop things and little backyard issues. And I didn't want them to go there. I don't think anybody wanted them to go there. We were most concerned with these large commercial arrays and how they would impact the land. I think stormwater's one, and certainly the escrow that Nancy just talked about is an important one.
I think to Nancy's point, let's restart it with some better direction, that we really want to focus on commercial installations and the impact that they will have, because they really have the long-lasting impact on the township. Someone who puts some solar arrays on their roof is not going to really impact the township.
No, I don't think we should change the way we're regulating those. We haven't had any problems with them. Yeah. We have about, I think, 15 or 16 installations already in the township, and we've gotten really only one complaint that I recall when it was put in, but I haven't heard anything lately. So they're pretty innocuous. So I think the issue of these bigger arrays, we haven't really. I mean, this thing just popped up again, and for me to get my head back into it. I'm not sure I'm ready to tell the PC exactly what to do. We might want to spend a month with the board just studying it and then come back with some very specific
Yeah, I agree.
to the board, to the PC, so they don't go off on a tangent. So
Yeah.
we know what we want. I'm not sure how I would direct them right now, but the areas we talked about are the areas that need attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Nancy was saying, why don't we revisit some of the surrounding townships and see what they did for commercial solar panel installations, and then we can look at a few of those and then build out some recommendations for the PC to consider. Because I'm with you. I mean, I think when I was joining, this conversation, and I was kind of shocked with the amount of, minor details that we were going to add restrictions on homeowners. And I moved into a neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA for a reason, and I didn't want to create because I'm an obnoxious neighbor. That's why I didn't want an HOA. Because I don't want the township to become an HOA, right? People move here for a lot of reasons, and one is for that sort of level of freedom to do what you want on your property within reason, of course. So I think, John, we're probably on the same page, and Nancy as well. Like, let's focus on the commercial installation.
I would say we come back, give it some time this month for all of us to work on it and study it and make sure that we understand what we want. And then I think at that point, we can come to a joint agreement as to what we want the PC to do. Because I think if you just give it back to the PC without any real direction, you're probably going to go right back to where they were in a confused way. I don't mean to criticize them, but they just got off the track on all these small installations, and that wasn't a problem. It was just there was an impending possibility of somebody building a large solar array down at Chisel Creek, and that's what kind of drove us to get an ordinance. But I think that's gone away. I don't think that's there now.
So, Joan, in terms of giving you guidance, I don't know that we should review what's currently there because it's just so long and complicated.
Well, the three issues that we have there are serious issues, and they do need to be addressed.
Right, absolutely. I'm just saying there's a whole lot of other stuff in that thing that.
Well,
I don't doubt it. But
this is a green energy ordinance, so it's not just solar panels. It covers wind, it covers manure digesters, it covers every possibility, and most of them, the PC was in agreement with the board. But when we got to these solar panels, like I said, they started off becoming much more restrictive. At the second meeting, they were more restrictive than you as a board were. And then we got to the third meeting and they changed their mind and they said, no, take away everything. And they were deleting everything that they had changed before. So what I'd like to see is that the board have time to read this. And we do have the samples that I've gotten from other townships that I can give you to look at and see what you would like to come up with, because right now the PC is going to be addressing the general code analysis. So they've got enough to do with that. So when that's done, then we can bring this to them again. By that time, you should have had time to look at it again.
Yeah, I think John, if we get that information together and draft a proposed,
some key bullet points of what we really where we want them to go. Joan, you mentioned a couple items that I think they're in there, but I'm not sure we want to put a whole lot of time in them. It's unlikely that we're going to have a manure digester into the township. That's a large farming operation where you're recovering methane from manure. The other one is the wind. We just don't have the kind of winds down here that really would generate any major facility with wind.
Even if we had the wind, we don't have the real estate to put in a wind farm that would generate any significant amount of energy.
The only problem is, and Jeff Vogels has brought this to my attention, if you don't cover it, then anything goes. So that's why you want something you want something here that deals with it. I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time.
So I understand that, but what does that mean in terms of wind farms? Like anything goes, but no one can do anything.
The issue we have are the ground or the land we have isn't very flat, and you just can't generate enough wind to make one of these things economical. It'd have to be an enormous elevation to do it. It would be economically.
But what I guess what I'm saying is, if our consultant is saying, well, if we don't do this, anything goes. Well, what is in his mind? What is anything? Like, what is the outcome? Is it?
I don't know. I guess I'd like to know what the possibilities are, because it's just
Right.
like we're spending a lot of time on two items that are unlikely to occur.
Right.
Here.
That's kind of where I'm at. Is
I
I think we're kind of going off topic here. I think the focus is, and Donna's intent was, let's get back on track here, and let's just use the next month or so to kind of present the PC with some guidance on what we're looking for.
Joan, let's just focus on commercial solar. And I think that's going to help us at least narrow down our thinking.
Okay.
Right. So that's going to be our homework for next meeting. Work on the commercial solar, come
Yes.
back with the items that you think might be missing. Either should be taken out of what's already there or should be added back to what's there. And then we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Well, the
All
one,
right.
just that the ordinance that is in your book currently is back to where you gave it to the PC to start with. Okay, so it's back to the original one that you approved back in 2019.
All right, good. So I'm just going to move you forward. I hope these next two are simpler, but so it has to do with the PA bidding limits. So what Joan's proposing is that we change what's in our, I guess it's in our ordinances or whatever you call this document. We used to have numbers. We used to talk about purchases between $10,200 and $18,900 that we need to do a certain thing, and purchases above $18,900 we need to do a formal bid process. What we're proposing to do is, instead of calling out particular numbers in our document, that we just reference back to the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and industry guidelines. So when they change the numbers, our numbers are automatically changed. And so, Jen, I'm going to turn this over to you again. So maybe you give the board a sense of what changes we're talking about in terms of the numbers.
Yeah, well, the current bid requirements are purchases between 11,300 and 21,000 require 3 written or telephone quotations. When you get over 21,000, then you require formal bidding. And if you look at our current purchasing document that's in your book, it still says 10,000 between 10,002 and 18,900. So it is behind. So if we do change it to read the way the sample that we have in your book, it says that it will meet the requirements as set by the PA Department of Labor and Industry guidelines, as Donna said. So we don't have to change this every year that they change. It will change automatically as they update it.
So what are our current limits versus what they will change to based on the current PA limits? What's coming from the two?
The current.
Need a resolution, or how do we do that?
Wait a minute. The current purchases that are between 10.2 and 18.9 require 3 bids, either written or telephone.
Yeah, but
so
how do we push it forward to the new numbers? Because every year they change the numbers. Do we need what do we need to do?
Yeah, we should have given you a motion for this, to go ahead, make a motion to change the purchasing agreement, the purchasing procedures to change with the
in accordance with the state of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Hold on a second. I didn't really get an answer yet, and I wrote some things down. Let me see if I read it right. It's that the current limit for our township is 10,200 to 18,900.
Yes, that's
okay. And then the change, if we follow the current PA recommendation, is 11.3 to 21.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I got it right. I didn't.
But John, what we're trying to get a motion for is every year they change these numbers. Like this year, they went from like 11,000 to 11,003. Joan wants us to have a resolution that we don't have to do this every year. We can just, if PA changes it, we change it.
I fully understand that. I still wanted to know what the reference numbers are. Otherwise, I didn't know what I was voting for, so.
Right. So I think we're all on the same page now. So, John, you got your question answered. Do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Donna, do you want to make a motion?
We're not voting for an amount. We're
No.
voting for whatever the state of Pennsylvania, if they change, so do we.
Right.
I think it's really important to note that they also have another requirement that we haven't mentioned, and that, I don't know if it's $8,000 or $7,000, Joan, but there's another requirement that says at that amount you need informal bids. So either we go whole hog and do it all according to the state, or we don't.
That would be below the 11,000.
Yeah, wait, what it says here, purchases and contracts below 11,300 require no formal bidding, written or telephonic quotations. Purchases between 11,003 and 21,000 require 3 written or telephonic quotations.
Joan, can you write that up for the next Board of Supervisor meeting, and we'll vote on it then? I'm not comfortable.
Okay,
the way
and
we're
we'll give you,
and
we'll give you
then
a
we'll have
motion.
it down on,
With Mark, because we had that discussion and they said there was an amount that said you must get in, you can get phone bids or informal bids. It was a must do. It wasn't an optional.
It was
Right,
11,000.
It was lower than that.
No, you can look it up.
So it's
Nancy.
it's gone up since ours.
It's 11.3 now. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
write that up for the next board meeting, and then we'll know what we're looking at rather than just throwing it around the air right now.
I think people are tired, so it's probably better to take it to the next one.
Yeah, Mary, what?
Okay, so
You're mute. You're on mute, Mary.
You're Mary.
No,
Mary.
Mary Opermola. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry, I can write that up for a motion for the next meeting. However, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as what we're doing. I believe what Joan was requesting was that the procedure that we currently have in-house aligns to the PA standards, so we don't have to keep updating our procedure, that we're going to be aligned to that procedure so it supports what you need to do going forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I understand, Mary.
All right, so I'll do that and put the information about that procedure in that section in the motion, so we're all on the same page.
Thanks,
Right, and Mary, what's important for you to do is when you do that, just quote, not that we'll put this in our motion, but you'll quote what the current PA numbers are, so folks get a sense of what the change is. So
okay, we can quote that, but I don't.
Not in the motion.
No.
We won't put it in the motion, just, it's an FYI, so just.
Oh, okay, so it's part of the discussion. Okay.
Yeah, no numbers.
All right, because we don't want numbers in the procedure, so it's aligned. Okay, okay, cool, good.
All
Thanks.
right.
Okay, so now last thing, almost last thing. So we want to talk about, and this is Nancy, you brought this up at the last meeting, and it has to talk about an escrow system for conditional use. And the idea is to, when people come to do conditional use, that there's a certain amount of money that they put into escrow. And then if based on the feedback we have to get from different people, if they use it all, then they have to pay whatever extra. If they don't use it all, they get the money back. So it's a way of making the conditional use procedure really neutral for us, that we're not going to make money, we're not going to lose money. But we have to link it to when people come to do conditional use, there'll be an escrow fee that they pay, and that they get either pay more if the procedure costs more money, or they get money back if the procedure costs less money.
Mark, could you address this? Donna, Mark and I have, had emails back and forth about this. Could you address what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, Mark?
So the MPC, sure, Mary, sorry about that. Yeah, the MPC is very clear what can be charged in relation to a zoning hearing. And that's specifically only the advertising costs, half of the court reporter, and anything administrative. There's less guidance for conditional use hearings. So I provided a couple examples of other townships that I've done work in, which require a minimum fee as well as an escrow account, and specifically requiring that escrow account cover issues such as advertising fees, notice fees, court reporter fees, and consultant fees. So I think the township has the ability to do that. We would need to basically hone in on the numbers of what the applicant, we can't use these types of application fees as revenue generators. I think that everyone knows that. So we need to ostensibly pick a base fee and then require if, an application is a little bit more complicated and time consuming, put in an escrow amount that would be replenished as the conditional use moves through the process. We would do that by ordinance. And if the board was interested in moving forward, I could put an ordinance together, taking the language that we've seen from other townships that do this.
So, Mark, the thing that appealed to me, and I don't know if you're addressing this, is that I understand that when it costs more than what the normal fee is, that you do the escrow. But what about the person who pays the $1,500 and it was a very simple, it cost $100? Can we set it up that they get money back?
Well, the base fee would be less. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, no, you could do that. It's simple.
Yeah, I think I think from a fairness perspective, if the rest of the board agrees, I like to see it set up so that there is a fee, you got to start with, but then at the end of the procedure, if you didn't use all that money, you get it back. If it costs more, then you'd have to pay, or you have an escrow, however you want to do it. But
that's what I was going to say. If
We're already doing that, Donna. We don't make any profit off of anything.
No, I think there are consistent situations. I'll stop. Go ahead, John.
You charge a fixed fee and you don't spend it all, then it's a net income to the township. So I think Donna's trying to make it fair to the user to only charge them for what they used.
My original thought was that instead of setting a number, saying, look, the township will commit up to, so the conditional use of the golf course is a great example. Because we had no ceiling, we spent a lot of money with consulting. And I think when Joan pulled it together, we spent about $11,000 and they withdrew that. So you can imagine how much more we would have spent if they would have kept going with it. And so I think we need to protect the amount of money that our community might spend on something. I'm fine in saying, hey, you know what, the township will pick up the first 5,000 or whatever. I just think we need to put a ceiling on it.
So I guess I have a question. Why would we pay the first 5,000?
Yeah, I would do that
at
either.
all. Like why? Like we should pay zero. Like if you want to come in and do business, you pay the money. Like we're not going to pay for you to set up your own business. Like that seems ridiculous to me.
And we may not want to do that. Yeah,
Joan, I would say
want to figure out how we protect ourselves.
Well, I have a suggestion. Right now, we charge $1,500 to whoever. So what if we said, okay, $500 is the fee for coming before us for conditional use, and $1,000 goes into escrow, which you would need to supplement if we blew through that. And that way, the little guy will probably get some money back, and the big guy is going to have to keep giving us additional funds to cover their expenses. So they're still putting up the $1,500 that we currently ask for, but it's being managed in two different ways. So we would get our $500 fee. And
you'll definitely use that, right? It's not
that's a fee.
Right, that's a reasonable number.
That's similar to what we do with stormwater right now. We have a stormwater fee of $150, and then everybody has to give us escrow money, depending on how big their project is. So
that seems fair, Joan. And if we're allowed to write an ordinance up that way, I think we should. It protects the little guy, but it also protects all the residents for not paying a lot of money for what one person wants.
And we're
Right,
not
right.
making any money off of this. We're not
Exactly.
losing money, but we're not making money.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's, I think, the clarifying point here is
Yeah.
we're not trying to make any money. This isn't a cost-making effort. This is,
No.
is to keep the township from paying all of these fees when a developer comes in and wants to do something.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
not
think
fair to spend $10,000 for one person for what they want. I mean, that's all our tax money. That's not fair. We just want to make it fair.
Yep,
That's all.
I agree. I think
Okay.
we're all on the same page.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Mary, back to you. I'm finished my section.
Okay, so did we decide we want Mark to write up an ordinance along the
Yes.
lines of how we feel?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, done.
Yeah.
Wow, we're at the point of public comment. Anyone have any public comments on anything? Does not have to be
No.
on the agenda tonight.
All right.
Okay, doesn't sound like there is.
Dave
Well-
doesn't get lunch.
I know, no one.
We're an hour late.
I'm so sorry. It was a good meeting, though. But you didn't get lunch.
Wait a minute, I missed that. He was gonna get lunch if what?
Oh, you didn't hear this? Oh, yeah.
I
He's done
didn't.
by 8:30.
I thought we would be, but I think we had a great discussion on the house on Appleton Road and we needed to have it. And I didn't think it would go as long as it did, but it was a very good discussion, you know. But any case, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 9:27.
Yay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.